The dawn sun had barely slipped its first fingers through the magnolia trees surrounding Graceland when a heavy canvas sack thumped onto Elvis Presley's mahogany desk. He paused mid-stretch, eyes still bleary from restless sleep, and regarded the pile of fan mail that always arrived on Mondays. Most envelopes brimmed with gilded ticket stubs, scrapbook pages, and folded sheet music, vibrant pleas for autographs or dedications. But one letter, nestled beneath the usual fanfare, bore a different weight. It was small, its handwriting neat and deliberate, and the return address read simply, James E. Malcolm, Cahaba County, Alabama. Elvis picked it up as if handling a fragile relic. The return address alone sent a familiar ache through his chest. He remembered a boy from Tupelo, years ago, who had told him, softly, eyes wide, that music could mend broken hearts. Now this boy was 9, writing to a man who often felt more mask than person. Presley slit the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of lined notebook paper. Dear Mr. Presley, my name is James Elwood Malcolm. My father served in Vietnam. They say he stole supplies and was shot near the old brick warehouse. He never came home. Folks here say he was a criminal, but I know he was just cold and needed blankets for us. Mama cries every night because they buried him like a thief. Would you tell people that he was my hero? Please make sure they remember he was brave, not bad. Elvis set the letter down, fingertips tracing the boy's neat cursive. He felt the echo of similar words directed at his own father, once dismissed at a factory gate, unjustly blamed for a mistake he did not commit. His heart tightened in memories of that whispered resentment. You're not like the rest of us. He stood, moving slowly to the window where the magnolias swayed in the morning breeze. Every other plea could wait. Weddings, birthdays, song requests. This was different. Elvis rubbed his temples, the edges of his vision tinged with the same melancholy that had driven him into seclusion after the '68 comeback. He let the silence fill the room, the hush more eloquent than studio applause. By mid-morning, he had summoned his private secretary, ordering no typed reply, no perfunctory signed photo. Instead, he said, "We're going to Alabama." His voice sounded strange to his own ears, a calm resonance laden with purpose. There was no talk of press releases or a stage courtesy visit. He simply asked for directions to Cahaba County and booked a flight under an assumed name, Mr. Thomas Bright. Packing a single overnight bag, Presley chose stained jeans instead of flashy pants, a plain shirt rather than tailored suits. He tucked the letter into his inside jacket pocket, determined to let the boy's words guide him. As he slipped out through the side door, the fans arriving for rehearsals would pass by, oblivious to the fact that their idol's next performance would not be on any grand stage, but in a dusty classroom where an overlooked child waited for someone to speak his father's truth. Elvis paused at the gate, taking a last look at Graceland's white columns, symbols of celebrity he now felt distant from. With that, he turned his back on the mansion and stepped into a waiting sedan, the letter burning quietly against his heart. The routine of stardom lay behind him. Ahead stretched quiet country roads and a meeting that could not be staged. The king was going to bear witness. Elvis Presley stepped off the rented Greyhound bus at the dusty crossroads of Prattville, Alabama, his face hidden beneath a driver's cap and tinted goggles. He carried no bodyguards, no entourage, only a small satchel containing the boy's letter and a cassette recorder loaded with plain tape. He navigated the baking sun toward the brick and limestone building marked Cahaba County Colored School. A solitary oak tree arched near the stoop, its shade offering brief relief from the merciless morning heat. As he approached the front entrance, the school's motley group of children spilled onto the sidewalks during recess. Their laughter and shouts echoed through cracked windows, while a lone custodian, wearing a paint-splattered smock, mopped the stoop. Presley hesitated, scanning the scene. This was no plush auditorium in Las Vegas, but a segregated institution where resources were scant. Peeling paint on the walls, windows with missing panes patched by cardboard, and a single map of the United States pinned to the chalkboard inside, its paper brittle and yellowed. He removed his cap, stepping up to the custodian with an easy nod. "Morning," he murmured, voice low. "I'm here to see James Malcolm. I was sent by someone who trusts me." The man froze, mop handle trembling in his grip. He peered up, recognition dawning in his bloodshot eyes as he took in the familiar glint of Presley's jawline and the tilt of his shoulders. Even though the star was clad in work-worn trousers and a plain shirt, the custodian swallowed, voice quavering. You're him." He looked toward the school's main door, where 3 tall flagpoles stood guard over cracked concrete. "But you can't go in like that." He lowered his broom. "They don't let white men inside here. Not for nothing." Elvis nodded, slipping the cap back on. "Could you show me another way?" The custodian hesitated only a breath before leading him around the side of the building to a narrow alley behind the cafeteria. A back door bore peeling letters. "Keep closed." The custodian produced a key ring and unlocked the door with a decisive click, then beckoned Elvis inside. The corridor beyond was dim and smelled of antiseptic mixed with dusty breeze. Voices chattered ahead. The custodian knocked softly, muttering, "Miss Fay, there's someone here to see James." Footsteps approached, and a slender woman with steel-gray hair tied in a bun peered through a glass pane. Her mouth curved upward when she recognized Presley. "Thomas?" she whispered, using the alias he'd provided. "Come in." Quietly. Inside room 4, 9-year-old James sat at a desk with spidery handwriting sprawled across loose-leaf paper. He furrowed his brow, pressing his pencil into the page as if wrestling every word from his heart. The other students, noting the mysterious visitor, fell silent. Presley removed his cap, revealing his face. The children gasped, but Miss Fay raised a hand. "He's a friend," she said softly. "James, this is Mr. Bright." James blinked, unsure. A hush descended. Presley knelt beside the boy's desk, resting an encouraging hand on the aged wood. "James," he said, voice gentle, "I got your letter." The boy's eyes widened, tears pooling at the corners before he forced them back. Presley continued, "I came to hear your truth in your own words." He drew the cassette recorder from his satchel, setting it on the desk. "May I record what you have to say?" The child nodded, straightening in his seat. Around them, the classroom's flaws faded into insignificance. The chipped window sills, the frayed edges of the American map, the faded honor roll that listed only white soldiers. Here, 2 people bridged distance and color with a shared understanding of loss and injustice. The recorder clicked on. Elvis leaned forward, his expression intent. "Tell me about your father," he prompted. James drew in a shaky breath. "He was Sergeant James Elwood Malcolm. He volunteered to go back because Mama needed black market supplies, blankets, clothing. They found him by that warehouse. They said he stole gear, but he was just trying to protect us." His voice quivered on the final word. Elvis's throat tightened. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a silver military dog tag, a replica he had commissioned earlier, engraved with Sergeant James E. Malcolm. He placed it on the desk. The boy's mouth fell open. "This belonged to him?" he asked. Presley nodded. "And I want you to have it until I can make sure the world knows your father's name properly." Tears spilled down James's cheeks as he touched the cool metal. Miss Fay stood at the door, watching 2 souls connect across a gulf of history. Elvis pressed the stop button on the recorder. "Thank you for sharing, James," he said, voice choked. "You speak for him now, and for all who went unseen." They rose. Presley gave James's shoulder a firm squeeze before slipping back through the narrow door and escorting him to the school's front gate under the guise of Mr. Bright and the custodian. He paused at the sidewalk, adjusting his cap. "Keep speaking your truth," he urged. James pressed the dog tag to his chest, voice firm at last. "I will." And as Elvis walked away, the boy's small figure stood against the rising sun, no longer voiceless, but heard. The spotlight's glare washed over the darkened auditorium, transforming every face into a pale, silent witness. Elvis Presley stood at the edge of the stage, guitar slung low, as the hush stretched beyond the first rows and curled into the balcony. Only the soft crackle of the sound system and the distant murmur of stagehands lingered. He lifted the microphone, its metal mesh catching a glint of light, and for a moment closed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice rolled across the silent crowd like a soft breeze. "Good evening," he began, pausing to let the words settle. "Tonight, I'm dedicating this performance to a man whose name you've never heard, and likely never will. A soldier who gave everything for his family, only to be called a criminal." The words landed gently but carried every ounce of conviction he felt. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some leaned forward. Others exchanged questioning looks. The theater breathed as one, eyes focused on the solitary figure at center stage. Backstage, his manager's face drained of color. He clutched the edge of the curtain, lips moving in silent objection. But Elvis held up a hand. No frantic whispers of publicists or calls for spin doctoring pierced the moment. On stage, he had made his choice. Elvis set his guitar aside and took a few measured steps forward. "If it weren't for one simple act of courage," he continued, voice steady, "I likely wouldn't be standing here tonight." He scanned the sea of onlookers. "And I want his son to know this truth. His father was no thief. He was a hero." For an instant, the only sound was his breathing, as if the world had stopped to listen. Then a single, tentative clap broke the stillness, followed by hesitant applause that built into a rolling ovation. After letting the embrace of gratitude wash over him, Elvis turned back to the microphone. "This next song has no names, no credits, just the story of a man whose sacrifice echoes in the whisper of wind, the rustle of leaves, and the beating heart of every child who looks for justice." He stepped to the side, nodding to the band, and the first chords of a melody unlike any he'd sung before unfurled in the dim light. The introduction was spare, a lone acoustic guitar, its notes ringing clear and hollow like distant bells. Elvis's voice joined, hushed but unwavering. He walked the fields where shadows grow, his footprints lost beneath the snow, a silent oath, a vow untold, to shield the young, to warm the cold. Each verse wove images of unseen valor, a man trudging through storms to carry blankets, offering his body as shelter, his breath a prayer for another's survival. The chorus soared on a single line repeated, "His courage lives, though his name fades." No mention of Vietnam, no direct reference to warehouses or whispers of theft. Yet in every metaphor, the boy's father stood tall and unashamed. The audience, wrapped in the gentle swell of music, fell into an awed stillness. The grand chandeliers seemed to dim as every person leaned in, caught in the spell of sincerity. When the final chord rang out and Elvis's voice trailed into silence, there was not a single call for an encore, only the hush of collective understanding. Outside the theater doors, fans spilled into the night, their conversation low and contemplative. Reporters scribbled furiously, only to find that the star offered no further comment. Who was it about? What soldier did he honor? They pressed him at the stage exit, but Elvis simply touched each hand and whispered, "Sometimes the greatest stories are those left untold." Meanwhile, in that small classroom in Alabama, 9-year-old James Elwood Malcolm huddled beside an old radio on the windowsill. His teacher had whispered that something special happened tonight, but he didn't know what to expect. When the first strains of that song floated through the crackling speaker, he froze. Each lyric felt like a message written just for him, each chord a heartbeat of recognition. Tears slid down his cheeks, and he pressed his ear closer as if afraid to miss a single note. Beside him, his classmates sat in stunned silence, the hum of the dial a faint undercurrent to James's quiet sobs. His mother, waiting at home by the same radio, wrapped the receiver in her shawl and wiped her eyes. She knew then that his father's name, though never spoken on stage, had found its place in the heartbeats of strangers across the country. Days later, at the Cahaba County Colored School, Miss Fay gathered her students before tacking a photograph above the chalkboard, a grainy portrait of Sergeant James E. Malcolm in uniform. Beneath it, she wrote in chalk, "Our hero, remembered." And though his name had never been uttered in that packed theater, it resonated here, etched forever in the map of young minds who now carried his story in their own voices. Dawn light filters through the dusty blinds of young James Malcolm's bedroom in rural Alabama, illuminating the narrow strip of pine floor where a small parcel rests overnight. He finds it at his doorstep, a padded mailing envelope stamped in Tennessee. His heart pounds as he tears it open, revealing a neatly typed letter, an autographed photo of Elvis in uniform, and a plain cassette tape labeled in Presley's handwriting. "For James, play when you're ready." He settles on the edge of his unmade bed, legs dangling inches above the floor. His fingers tremble as he unfolds the letter. "Dear James, I never could give you back the father you lost, but this small recording carries his spirit forward. Listen, and remember that his courage echoes in every note. Your voice will keep him alive for others. Keep singing. With respect and gratitude, Elvis Presley." The room holds its breath as James's eyes trace each word. A slow warmth spreads across his chest, equal parts comfort and sorrow. He rises to an ancient stereo cabinet in the corner, smooths the knob until the deck clicks open and slips the tape into place. The motor whirs, the head lowers, and then a single guitar chord rings clear. Presley's voice follows, gentle and resonant. A soldier walks beyond the dawn, whose footsteps guide the weary on. In silent fields where shadows roam, his melody leads every home. James feels tears pool as the melody winds through the room. It's not the grand arrangements of the King's concerts, but a stripped-down ballad, Elvis alone with an acoustic guitar, his voice unguarded and raw. Each line carries the boy's father forward, no name needed, for the words themselves conjure Sergeant Malcolm's bravery and sacrifice. When the final note fades, James sits in silence, clutching the letter to his heart. That afternoon, he retrieves his battered school notebook and begins to write. He scribbles chords and phrases inspired by the tape, soft rhythms that mirror his father's steady march, lyrics about a shield made of the wind, a lullaby for those left behind. His pencil moves in spirals, each stroke a promise carried on the pages. He works until his mother knocks softly on the door at dinner, hesitating as he emerges, hair mussed and eyes bright with purpose. Months later, a local benefactor hears of James's song and offers to record it for a charity compilation supporting veterans' families. When the album is released, its opening track is this very piece, "Echoes of the Brave," sung by James Malcolm, though the liner notes list no hometown and no age, only the title and dedication, "For those whose names were lost to history." Across the South, radio announcers catch their breath before spinning the record, moved by the haunting young voice that opens the fundraiser. Listeners write in to share their own stories, many remembering loved ones who fought and fell. The airwaves hum with a collective remembrance born from a boy's plea and a star's compassion. Years pass. In a renovated performance hall in Memphis, a polished bronze plaque is unveiled on the backstage wall, in honor of James Elwood Malcolm, whose silence became the song that carries us still. When James stands before the small gathering of veterans, journalists, and former classmates, he touches the plaque gently. His voice trembles as he speaks. "This isn't my story alone. It belongs to every man and woman who fought unseen." That evening, atop Graceland's balcony, Elvis Presley, older now, his hair lightly grayed, listens through borrowed headphones to a newly remastered demo of James's song. The wind stirs the magnolia blossoms at his shoulder. As the last chord lingers, Elvis exhales softly. Sometimes a letter isn't just ink on paper, it's a melody waiting to be found. He smiles to the empty night, knowing that one truthful note can carry a lifetime of memories into the song.